Hello everybody. Since we're coming up on New Year's Eve pretty soon, I wanted to do a video on the new figures that I added to the collection. And you're looking at them here, plus a couple of Burger King glasses too. And as you can see, I also got some new stands that put the name of the manufacturer on the figure there. So you see the Lily Ley. I had to do my own Takara one. They didn't have those. But these are the figures that I got this year. And all but like two of them are from other countries. So we're going to go over each one by one and show you what made me decide to add this one to the collection this year. All right, so we're going to start with the Burger King glasses from the original movies. I have a soft spot for the non 3 3/4 inch stuff too, you know, from Star Wars. And I remember as a kid having almost all these glasses. We don't have any of them now. So I picked these up. I just wanted one from each movie. And I actually have another two from Return of the Jedi that I got a few years ago. But these I got this year. This one here I actually got at an antique store here near where I live. And really cool place called A to Z Pawn Shop in Palos Heights, Illinois, if you ever want to check it out. But there you can see really great graphics. They did an awesome job on the artwork on these. And this is Burger King made these, or had these made. They also say Pepsi on them, I believe, or Coca-Cola. Yep, Coca-Cola. And there you can see the date, which is 1977 right there. And I love that one with Vader on it. And then this one's really cool. This is Empire Strikes Back. Starting with this one, you can see the Star Wars one. And actually, this one's a little bit smaller too. So they're a little bit different sizes, but they are Coca-Cola Burger King. This one's got some really awesome Bespin graphics on it. And again, there's the year, let's see, 1980. There you go. And this one is another Empire Strikes Back from Dagobah. Just they did a really great job on these, and they were built to last too. These are really old. And here's a Return of the Jedi one from the Rancor scene. And let's see, there's the date over here. There we go, 1983. So these are nostalgic for me, but they're really collectible. Not too expensive, but you can find them online, or it's not uncommon to find them at some local antique stores too. So these are the Burger King Coca-Cola glasses from the original movies from 1977, 1980, and 1983. All right, Bespin Princess Leia. She's always been one of my favorite figures. I probably have a dozen of them or so. But I hadn't bought any in several years. So this year I found these three and I couldn't resist. The Lily Ley on the left from Mexico, the Pac in the center, and the one on the right is a Unitoy factory made in Hong Kong for the US market. And it's in great condition. What makes it special to me too is I didn't pay much for it, but I was surprised that you can see the cape and see the lines in the cape over here, and it's really rough. They call that the textured cape. And it's a little more rare, less common than the smooth cape ones. But everything's factory complete there for Unitoy. The middle one, Pac, if you've heard in my other videos, Pac was a factory in Spain that produced the figures there for that market. And during the era that we call the Pac era, which was during Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back production, Pac wasn't doing any injection molding there in Spain. They were importing the parts from the Hong Kong factories and painting and assembling them there. So Pac figures will have different paint. They'll have they're the same plastic that went to the US market, but different paint jobs, and assembled differently too. This one was assembled nice. I've looked, I don't really see much for melt marks on it. But one of the things that's different with the Pac figure is she's got that little bit of reddish hair. This is a Cater factory parts, as I'll show you. That's what a Cater factory CO and date stamp look like. So one of these days I got to find a Cater weapon for, but it's a beautiful figure. And one thing nice about POC figures is if you get one that's bare bones, it doesn't have any accessories, the accessories are the same ones that were made for the U.S. market. So if you want them factory correct, like I said, her cape is correct. If I want to get a factory correct gun for, I would get a Cater factory gun. The Lily Ley from Mexico, she's another one that's got a little bit more pale face, very dark hair. One thing I want to show you with the POC too is the hands. You can see how white the POC hands are compared to the other factories. And with Ley, this one, they didn't make any that said made in Mexico. They usually, if they made their own mold, they didn't put any country of origin stamp. This time though, they just imported the mold there from China and used that mold, but the figure was actually made in Mexico. They just didn't take the China part out of the mold. So that's a look at the 3 different Bespin Leia figures that I added to the collection this year. All right, next up is one of my favorite things that I got this year, and it looks a little weird right now. This is a overstock figure from Lily Ley. That's why it's not welded. The chest piece, I just mounted it on this with some museum putty, and that's just for display purposes. But the chest will snap right into here, and he doesn't need any support. He'll stand up fine. I don't have the left arm, that wasn't with him, but I have everything else. And you can see I stuck him together with some museum putty too, because the chest plate isn't in there. There's the Ley date stamp. And the only thing that would have made this cooler for me is if it was unpainted. But it's Ley overstock. These were just parts when Lily Ley closed their Mexico City location down. They had a bunch of spare parts, and I have other figures too that are made up of, but they made one figure from about 3, maybe one head from one figure, a torso from a different figure, arms and legs. So you get the Frankenstein figures, and then you have some like these that are just in pieces, and they snap together just fine. But I like the way it displays this way. I like to show that it's not sonically welded, and kind of show you what a figure looks like on the inside too. So that's Lily Ley, Goring Guard. If you've seen my other videos, go back to some of my older videos, and I have a lot of them on Goring Guard. I have over 50 of him, so I'm kind of a GG freak. But that's Lily Ley Overstock Goring Guard. All right, so I added a couple of Walrus Man figures to the collection this year. The one on the left is a Kenner one. There was only one factory that made the Cantina figures for the U.S. market, and that was the Smile factory. The one on the right was made for the French market. That's a Meccano, and you can see the difference in the plastic on the head. And they call that the mint green one on the right there, the Meccano. Really popular variant, different eyes, different everything. Really, the blue plastic is different. You can see the Meccano has really glossy boots. No country of origin. And this one is a Smile factory, and you can see this one is a no country of origin too. So what happened at one point, the Smile factory sent the molds for the Cantina figures over to Spain for PBP to make them. And then PBP, when they were done, they sent them back to the Smile factory where they smoothed out the no COO. So they were probably still made in the factory in Hong Kong, but I'm not 100% sure. But these are 2 really great additions. That Meccano variant, like I said, that's a pretty highly sought after variant in the vintage collection circle. So I was glad to add one. But yeah, the hands, the heads, the arms and legs, everything's very different on those. So that's Walrus Man. Really happy to add those to the collection this year. And sticking with Cantina figures, I added a couple of Greos this year. And you can see they're both PBP, but very different from each other. And let's see, let's pick you up. And we'll take a look. The one on the left has the greener boots, the one on the right, blue boots. And you can see the paint on the hands, a little bit different. Much more glossy on the one on the left. And they also have their elbows. This one's painted blue. The one on the left is green. And then their heads have different plastics too. The one on the left is a darker plastic, darker green, dark blue eyes compared to the one on the right. They're both PBP, but that blue boots one would be the variant with these. There's a look at the country of origin rubbed out there. It's a scar. They both have different scars. So you can see there. What would happen is they put something over the Hong Kong and the mold, and that would break off. And then they put another one. That's why you have different scars. Whatever they covered the Hong Kong and the mold with, that created the scar in the figure. So you can see how different those two look at each other. They're really cool variants. The blue boots one, like I said, is more rare, but they're both really awesome. PBP, made in Spain. And the difference between POC and PBP, they were the same company, but during the Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back era, they called themselves POC. They put POC on the packaging. And during that time, as I said before, they weren't doing any injection molding of the plastic there. They were just importing the parts from Hong Kong. When they switched, they were still the same company, but they started putting PBP on their labeling is when they started doing injection molding there in Spain. And that's when you start getting the no country of origin stamp. So if you have what you think is a PBP figure and it has a Hong Kong or some country of origin, it's not PBP. They did not have a country of origin on any of their figures. POC did. So these are both PBP, made in Spain, injection molded in Spain, and still very different from each other. And that's Greedo. This is another really cool edition. This is a Lily Ley from Mexico, Lando Calrissian, and totally different paint than the US versions. It's a really nice one too. Doesn't have the gun. I'll show you what the country of origin stamp says. It says China, just like the Princess Leia one. So they, Lily Ley didn't care that it said China. They just wanted to make a figure and get it out. So they didn't bother changing the mold. But this one, the mold itself was made in China, but this figure was used that mold and made it in Mexico for the Mexican market. And if you see my other videos, you know I love Lily Ley figures too. So this was a cool one to add to the collection. Lando Calrissian. All right, I also added a couple of new Darth Vaders to the collection this year. The one on the left is Top Toys, made in Argentina. The one on the right is Lily Ley, made in Mexico. So what's interesting about Top Toys is they didn't use Kenner molds to make their figures. Instead, they took the Kenner figures and made molds out of those to make their molds. So their figures are always going to be a little bit smaller than anybody else's, including this Lily Ley here. They also don't have footholes in the, for the pegs here. So you can see this guy's held in by museum putty. Which is a great thing if you're trying to display these. Go ahead and get some museum putty to hold their guns in their hands, and some of them don't stay on these stands, so the museum putty is really nice and it doesn't damage anything. But anyway, that's my little spiel for museum putty. This is Top Toys Argentina, and then this one's Lily Ley Mexico, and I'll show you. This is Top Toys, doesn't have any markings at all, no country of origin, no date. And there you can see the museum putty. And the Ley has remnants of a Hong Kong. It says Hong Kong on it. And he also has a little bit of a, I don't know if we can get the right lighting in on it, but a little bit of a purplish hue when the lighting is right on him. It's kind of hard to tell. But the Ley Vaders are pretty cool. There's a couple different versions of him. These both got added to the collection this year just because I have a weak spot for Lily Ley, and Top Toys just makes awesome stuff. This cape, on the other hand, it's the right size and everything. It's not Top Toys. It didn't come with the figure, but it's one that I had. But I'm not sure if it's legit or not. I'm going to have to do some more research. But those are my two new Darth Vaders. Top Toys Argentina, Lily Ley Mexico. All right, this is one of the more rare editions I added this year. It's a Dengar. in a sealed baggie that says Pallet Toy Parker Bradgate, which is very rare. There are some out there made in Hong Kong. The ones that I've seen were in one of the Facebook groups when I shared this, and they shared somebody had a handful of these, and they sold them off. But those are the only ones that anybody's ever seen, so that there's only a handful of them that we've seen so far. I got a good deal on it, so I got it. But it's a regular Kenner figure inside. I think I want to say it was a Unitoy factory figure, either Unitoy or Smile. But the Pallet Toy Parker Bradgate, I'd never seen that before. And Pallet Toy was the company that had the license to release the figures in the UK, and they distributed them throughout other parts of Europe too. But they didn't make any of their own figures. They either used Kenner figures or sometimes PBP, but they didn't make any figures themselves. They did a few play sets. They did a really awesome Death Star, but they didn't make any of their own figures. They do have, I should say, they didn't make the figures there in the UK. There are, I believe, 2 figures that I have that you consider Pallet Toy. One being the olive-haired Smile No COO Luke Skywalker, and the other one being the pale-faced geisha Leia, Bespin Leia, which I've done videos on those before. Those you would consider Pallet Toy. I don't know where they had them made, but this one was made in Hong Kong. It's just a regular Kenner figure, but you just don't see, get a little bit closer look, you just don't see that. You usually just see Pallet Toy. So I guess Parker and Bradgate were their partners as the full name of the company. But very cool variants as far as the packaging goes. Regular Kenner figure inside, but I love it. We'll see. I'm not a major Dengar collector. I just like stuff from other countries. So we'll see how long this one stays in my collection. It might go on the chopping block sometime next year. But for right now, I love it, and it displays well. So that's a Pallet Toy Parker Bradgate baggie Dengar. And next up is a Lily Jawa. And I really just wanted one of each of the first 12 figures, but from different countries. And that's why I got that Pak Sand People and this Ley Jawa. No hood or no cape or weapon. Ley made an interesting Jawa. You can always tell they call that the almond eyes. They're always oval and a darker brown. And then you can really tell with the color of the bandolier and everything too. As far as capes go, Ley made a regular cloth hooded cape like Kenner did. They made another one, a cloth hooded cape where the hood was stitched on. They made one where the hood was removable, and then they made a vinyl cape. Anyone with a cape sells for more money, but the vinyl cape one is the most expensive one, and the removable headpiece cape, it goes for crazy money too. I wasn't looking to spend a ton of money, so to buy one bare bones, you can get them in the $50, $60 range. Actually earlier in the year, I've seen a few sell for more than that recently. This one's nice. There you can see does say Hong Kong on the back. Some of the earlier Ley figures, as we've seen, they didn't use their own molds. They started using their own molds, I think, closer to the Return of the Jedi era. Most of the figures from the Star Wars and Empire era that they made, most of those, I think, have their country of origin stamp on there. So this is a Lily Ley Jawa. One more Cantina figure to go over. This is a PBP Snaggle Tooth. Very cool figure. Very bold red compared to the Kenner ones. And there's the little no COO scar. So one of the things with this guy, or with this mold, is you'll see that scar. This mold got sent back to the Smile factory where they made more of these for the US market. And it's the same scar as this, but it's more of a maroon plastic. So I've been on the lookout for one of those. They're kind of hard to find. The Smile No COO factory Cantina figures are harder to find than the PBP ones. They don't go for as much money, but they're harder to find. So otherwise, he's in great condition. I don't have his gun, but a little bit, like I said, very different red plastic and a little bit different paint too. And the face paint is done differently on this guy too. So this is PBP made in Spain, Snaggle Tooth, and a pretty cool addition to the collection. All right, here's an interesting Emperor's Royal Guard. This is another Lily Ley overstock figure. It's all put together except for the head, and it didn't come with the cape or his little staff. This one also has a Hong Kong country of origin stamp. Most of the Return of the Jedi era figures that they made, as I said before, had Lily Ley's own mold, but this one they used a Hong Kong mold. And he's different plastic than the Hong Kong versions. As I said before, when Ley closed their doors in Mexico City, they had all these overstock parts, and employees were allowed to put them together and mix and match the different figures, or just as you saw with the Goring Guard, just take them and not weld them at all. This one was put together; it just never got the head put on, or the gown or the cape, which would go underneath the head there. So the head would go over it here. So this is a really cool addition, though. I didn't have an Emperor's Royal Guard from Lily Ley, so I figured I'd get one that was an overstock piece. So that's Mexican Lily Ley Emperor's Royal Guard, overstock. All right, and next we have the Emperor himself. This is a Lily Ley version. It's a darker plastic than the Kenner ones. A little bit different paint. What's interesting about this one, though, is he's got two left legs. There's a left leg in the front. There you can see the country, or not the country of origin. There is no COO. This one is just a date stamp. So this is one that was actually, the mold was made in Mexico too. And there's another left leg. So this is just a factory error. It's not overstock. It's actually common. There's a lot of them out there. When I shared this on Facebook, a lot of guys were sharing pictures of this one too, that they had. So it's a really cool factory error Lily Ley Emperor. And as I said, he's just a darker plastic than the Kenner ones, but pretty much the same country of origin stamp. So you have to, if you're trying to see if you have a Ley, just compare it to one. It should have a darker plastic. So that's Lily Ley with a factory error, two left leg Emperor. All right, so this is probably my second favorite figure that I bought this year. If you've looked through my old videos, you know Luke Skywalker is probably my favorite figure to collect. I have over 50 of them, but I've never had a PAC. And as I mentioned before, PAC was a Spanish company. They imported the parts from the Hong Kong factories and painted and assembled them there. And when they assembled the figures, their sonic welding technique that they used, their technology, wasn't as good as the ones in Hong Kong. It used heat to weld the figures together. And it shouldn't have left all these melt marks here. I'm going to move you in a little closer. One thing about PAC figures, since they did paint them themselves, with the Luke, it's a different shade of green tan on the legs. It just doesn't look like any of the Kenners. Same with the belt. The belt is a little more of a brownish tint to it than the Kenner ones have. This is a Cater factory. So they use the Cater mold, or the Cater factory pieces, I should say. Painted them themselves. So a little bit different yellow tint to the hair too. You see how loose his head is? It's not going to fall off. It's just that they did such a lousy job with the sonic welding that they didn't do it tight enough. And if you look here, normally you don't like to see that a figure was glued. My guess is that was probably done back in the late 70s, early 80s by the kid who owned this toy. And they did such a lousy job putting it together that had they not glued it, it probably would have fallen apart and got thrown in the garbage. So in this case, I'm glad somebody took the time to glue it and save it. One thing interesting, you see all these little pits all over here on the back too. That one on the belt. Those are melt marks from the sonic welding process. Now that the heat should not have affected the toy that way, but they didn't have very good technology over there in the PAC factory. So it's very common for their figures to have melt marks. And for us adult collectors, we love that. Probably when you were a kid, you know, in Spain, and you got this, and you probably thought, wow, they didn't do a very good job putting this together. But as adults, we love that. So it doesn't bother me that somebody put some glue on there and saved it. See the little crack mark here, the little melt mark there. All over these little pits are melt marks. There's some glue residue. You turn them around, and melt marks all over the front of the tunic too, and another crack mark here. So one on the front, one on the back. And that, again, that's not play wear, that's just from the sonic welding process. The discoloration you see on the arms, that's just the plastic degraded over the time. So Luke Skywalker, though, is always one of my favorite figures. I've wanted a pot for a long time, so I'm glad I finally added one. Very different than the Kenner counterparts, but one of my favorite figures in my collection. So this is Pac, Luke Skywalker from Spain. And last but certainly not least is my favorite figure that I bought this year. This is the Takara Japanese C-3PO. Takara was the toy company in Japan that had the license to produce the figures for Japan during the Star Wars era, which was 78, 79. And they did, when it came to the 3 3/4 inch figures, the only ones that they made themselves were this one, Darth Vader, and Stormtrooper. And they're all three completely different sculpts in the Kenner. They're different molds. Takara made their own molds and everything. I'll show you. There's the date stamp. You see Japan, 1978. And I brought over, I have a Kenner one here, just to show the difference in the faces. I'll bring you a little closer. And just look at the face, completely different. You know, the Japanese version, it has more of, it looks more like an anime robot, which I think looks awesome. Different body. I mean, not terribly different, but it's a different mold. Some of the details are different. But the face is, that's the money shot right there. Totally different. So it's made him a really, really popular variant. He's very rare. I mean, they are out there, but like right now, I don't know if there are any on eBay currently. But occasionally they do come up. I got a pretty good deal on this one, so I popped on it. But I've always wanted a Takara figure. Like I said, they only made 3. The other figures that they released, they just imported regular Kenner figures on Kenner card backs and put a Takara sticker on them. But for C-3PO, Darth Vader, and Stormtrooper, they made their own. They also made some larger die-cast ones, which I have videos of some of my other Takara stuff on here as well. So, like I said, he's the only one that says 1978. All the other C-3POs will say 1977. But it's cool. It is licensed. There you see the GMFGI. So it was licensed. They just, for whatever reason, I don't even know why they decided to make their own, but they did, and I'm glad they did. But that's the Takara C-3PO. It's an alternate sculpt. Very hard to find. Definitely my favorite figure. I've wanted one for a long time, so I'm glad I finally got one. So C-3PO Takara alternate sculpt. All right, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Please go ahead and hit subscribe and check out some of my other videos. I have a lot of them on here now. And feel free to leave any comments. Have an awesome new year, and let's see what we can add to the collection next year.